Okay, good morning. This is Dr. Nguyen. Uh, I'm your professor for English 1302. We're blessed to have this opportunity to stream this live to you so that you can at least have access to what we're doing in class. It's unfortunate that we're starting late, but what I will do within this 1 hour or so is to give you a preview. Um, a preview in a way of what we have done so far and where we are in terms of the syllabus. Ultimately, this class is aimed at doing a couple of things. Continuing the progress of English 1301, which is writing standard essays, using paragraphs, punctuation, and the mechanics of writing effectively to express your ideas, especially essays that address audience, define the purpose, and establish your voice, which is outcome number 2 of the QEP. And outcome number 1 is doing effective writing that uses standard English conventions. That's how to use capital letters, punctuation, spelling correctly, paragraphing correctly, and the MLS style. We did that in English 1301, and we continue in 1302, but the shift here is from the ordinary commonplace writing of essays on any topic to essays that are related to literature. This is a literature-based composition class, and therefore the raw material, or what we call the primary sources here, will be textbooks, essays, poems, plays, and short stories. Technically, we began with the short story, which Edgar Allan Poe defined as a story which is short enough for you to be read at one sitting. By one sitting here, we simply mean you should be able to sit down and read and complete the short story that's within an hour or 2 hours. Why? Because the emotional effect, the special emotional effect, can only be felt when you complete reading the story in its entirety. Once you read and suspend the reading and you come back, more often than not, you tend to forget what you have read, and by the end of the story, you remember more of what you just finished reading than what you read 5 hours ago or previously. So that's why he advises and defines a short story as something shorter than a regular essay in class, but shorter than a novel or a novella, but again, a little longer than the regular essay in class. Occasionally, we have some essays that are longer than short stories. But the difference between the short story and the essay is that language is used differently in these two. Yeah, we're still dealing with standard usage, but again, the author has the license in a short story to use the language of the people to reflect in the dialogue how the people talk and what they say and how they say it, which is part of what we call poetic license, which is given more to poets than to short story writers. But again, in an attempt to capture reality, in an attempt to capture the way the people speak, occasionally you have to use dialogue. Meanwhile, in an essay, the attempt in an essay is for you to be as formal as possible and to organize yourself into meaningful paragraphs. And in most essays, we ask you and we require that you come up with a thesis statement or hypothesis. But a short story has no hypothesis. A short story has but a theme, because the short story writer starts off thinking of something. Let's take, for instance, Everyday Use, which is the short story where we started with. The author looks at the whole concept of the African American family. Remember, Alice Walker was an African American lady too. She goes back to her homeland, to Georgia, and wants to create this situation where a family is made up of 3 individuals, the mother and the 2 daughters. Again, this immediately throws us into another domain, this idea of feminism, uh, trying to justify the contribution of female characters or women to our cultural development. This woman actually, Ms. Johnson, actually tells us that she does the work of a man. She wears dresses or clothes or attires that men do wear, and she can kill and skin a cow in just less than half a day. Before the sun sets, she dries the meat up to dry. She hangs it up to dry, and she can eat intels that have been taken out of the animal and boiled over a hot flame. So, in other words, these were things that were traditionally reserved for men, but you see women coming to do them, even doing them even better. And then we shift over from that to again to see the typical African American family at this particular time. You know, when Alice Walker was writing, she created almost like the watershed of African American writing, where women came to the scene, and the projection was not so much the male character or the white character, but the female character, and where the problem was no longer just the black and white, but again, black and black. We see that very clearly in The Color Purple, where the problem is Nettie and Celi's father and stepfather, and the problems they have. I think we are at this point, we have climbed over the mountain of racial prejudice, although it still exists, and we're looking at human relationships here, the relationships between the male and the females. So going back to everyday use, we still see again the influence of the Bible on Alice Walker here. Two daughters and a mother, which again is a reflection of the prodigal son's parable. Two sons and a father here, where one of the sons takes his inheritance and goes away, squanders the inheritance and comes back. One stays at home, and the one who stays at home is the humble, down-to-earth individual. Maggie is the one who stays at home. Dee is the one who goes to college in Augusta, Georgia. Before she went to college, the mother had given her some of those traditional things like the quilt or any appliances in the house that would reflect or make her think of where she grew and where she came from or where she comes from. Incidentally, we see Dee as a girl who was much more advanced, who knew what she wanted. Even at age 16, she knew exactly what she wanted. She's an extrovert. She's outgoing. Wants to create life. Wants a change in his life. She's not satisfied with what she has, as opposed to Maggie, who is a drawn-back kid who is homely, stays at home. And towards the end, let me skip towards the end. Dee tells Maggie, "This is a new day. And from the way you and Mom, from the way you and Maggie are doing things, you will never help yourself. You will never change yourself." Tells Maggie, "Do something. Stand up and do something. Go out and do something. Go out and change the world. Change your life so that the life will be much more meaningful." But the way she does is what confuses us, remember? The short story opens with the narrator, again, who is the teller of the story. Remember, we're going to use a lot of technical terms here. We don't talk about the teller of the story, but the narrator here is the participant, because she is the mother telling us about preparing for Dee's visit. And from that preparation, we haven't seen Dee. We see that Dee is everywhere. She influences the mother's attitude towards the home. They have to prepare for her coming. They have to sweep the house. They keep the compound clean, make things look good because, hey, Dee is coming back from college. And this is a reflection of what many of us have had before. Now, if you remember the first semester you went back home after college, You went back home as a different person. The expectation was different. Your siblings, if in a way, if you're a first generation college student, the expectations were different. They were looking up to you to see what you brought new, how different you were. And we find the same thing with D. They sweep the floor and everything else. Then the mother describes the two of them, Maggie and Dee. And from that description, again, which is the second thing here, we realize that she seems to have some kind of respect, some awe. It's more of awe than respect. Some awe, which is respect plus fear. Some awe for Dee, because he tells us Dee never accepted no. No wasn't a word that she accepted. She had her style at the age of 16. Didn't have a lot of friends. I mean, the few friends she had, she literally used them, just like she used the family to read to the family. The family didn't know much about reading. Remember, the mother said she didn't go to school. She just terminated after a couple of grades. And so we see Dee ramping down, just pushing down knowledge into their heads and trying to read to them, forcing them to understand. But Maggie, again, was the victim of a fire that burned the first house. And in terms of that burning, we tend to suspect that Dee, in a way, was responsible somehow, either remotely, for the burning of the house, because the mother says she stood under the gum tree, there smiling, as if she wanted the house burnt. And then the shingles, part of the roof fell on Maggie and burnt Maggie, leaving her with scars. And the mother describes the scars in a much more unfriendly way, and the way Maggie moves. Says she moves like a dog that has been ridden over by a car, or that has been run over by a car, an automobile. And again, we see that the mother seems to be more inclined towards Dee, and again, although accepting to Maggie in a way, she believes that Maggie has literally abandoned herself to the vagaries in the society, to the backward situation in the family. I think the key thing is that when Dee finally comes back, the expectation is that we want to see the changes she brings. And before she alights from the vehicle, the mother describes the legs, the dress, the multicolored dress pattern, the light reflected by the dress, and everything about Dee. She is strange. She looks like almost a butterfly, an angel coming into a godforsaken place. And then she starts taking pictures of everybody else and everything else. Not because she loves those things, but because she wants to take them home to school and display them as where she comes from, as an artifact, some kind of show business. As she comes, she touches about everything, the churn that the parents used to make milk and butter out of, the quilt and everything else. And everything she touches, she wants to take it home. To school. And the underlying principle is that she just wants to go showcase this, to present this to the world out there, to show where she comes from. But as for Dee needs this because he wants to use these things every day. Remember the title of the short story? Everyday use. And the climax arrives when Dee insists on taking those quilts that she had initially declined to take when the mother offered her on the day she was going to school for the first time. Initially, the mother said, okay, take them. What are we doing with them? Then Maggie, the girl who stays at home, sighs because remember the mother had promised to give Maggie those quilts for her wedding. Incidentally, she now has to take the quilts back from Dee and to give them to Maggie. And we see Maggie smiling. And then Dee looks back and says, look, you guys don't know anything. Maggie's going to you put it to everyday use. To everyday use. But a key point again is when Maggie comes, when Dee comes in with his boyfriend, I don't know whether it's husband or boyfriend, with this gentleman, he has a cumbersome name. His name is Akima Baba. And he greets them in an Islamic fashion, Assalamu alaikum, which is God with us. And these Georgian folks don't know exactly what Assalamu alaikum is. So the Big Mommy incidentally concludes that his name is Assalamu alaikum. But Assalamu alaikum was just a form of greeting. Then next, he attempts to shake hands with Maggie and to do it the African American way, the fashionable way. And Maggie is clumsy because Maggie is the shy type, the withdrawn type, the introvert, and it doesn't quite work. So then they fumble our names, and then they settle on Akima Baba. Then Mama says again humorously, is he a Baba because of the name Baba? No, he is not a Baba, but just that's his name, which is part of the humor that Alice Walker brings to the short story. Then in the end, they settle down to D when Mommy calls D. D says, wait a minute, I'm not D, I'm Wangero. It's a long name, Wangero. The mama says, what happened to D? Then D said, he's dead. D's dead, she's dead, because I did not want to bear the name the colonial masters gave me. I just wanted to extricate myself from my colonial roots. And by the way, where was the name D from? The mama explains that it was grandma's name, grandfather's name, great-grandfather, great-grandmother. It goes back into history to show that that was part of their inheritance. So accepting that the name D was part of carrying the inheritance forward. And she cannot be accepting or projecting inheritance or changing her name to get back to an African roots, while at the same time refusing the name D. So finally, the Big Mama accepts the Wangero, whatever it is, and lets it go. But here we see a couple of things. D has assumed an African name, a Kenyan name to be more exact, and whose meaning she doesn't quite know, except that it is an African name. She wants to go back to Africa. She wants to regain her African roots. But again, her attitude towards the mother, her attitude towards her culture is starkly in contrast to the whole concept of African identity. Because African identity is not subsumed in the names. Although we see a lot of people nowadays changing names of children or giving children strange names, South African names, Shaka Shaka, Zulu, Zaki, and all kinds of names, as a reflection of the African heritage, or wearing African attire as a reflection of their African roots. The concept of Africanness lies deeper in cultural values rather than in artificial exemplification or exhibition like clothes or like names. In fact, his relationship, or her relationship with the mother and her relationship with Maggie, in a way, reflects everything anti-African. We don't see much of a sympathy between her and the family. We see her more like a stranger, like an alien, running away from her background. And that's why when she was going to school, she had said she would never bring her friends because she was ashamed of her background. The African roots would necessitate or would force her to go back to her background, irrespective of how backward it is. Again, we see her taking the quilts, not because she's proud of her heritage, no. It's because she's going to use that as a showpiece on the wall there for some kind of artistic exhibition rather than the pride of it. It's just like most Americans go to Africa and bring out African cultures and sculptures from Africa to display, excuse me, to display in their museum. That doesn't transform America to Africa. Those cultures simply are a reflection of the backwardness or the artifacts from Africa rather than the conviction of those who have those artifacts to identify with those artifacts, because many of them hardly know exactly the meaning of those artifacts. So we see Alice Walker delving very deeply into the whole concept of culture here, and in a way suggesting that cultural artifacts do not make a person an African. What makes you an African or an autochthone is a deeper commitment to the values that are native of that continent or that country. Then when we move again to another short story, let's flip over to another short story, A&P. A&P deals specifically with this young boy called Sammy, who works in a store. The equivalent of that A&P, and I know some of you know A&P, you have A&Ps where you come from. It's like a unique store in a small country city, a country town. The only store that is available in a small religious environment where everybody knows everybody and people dress decently, and you can count the number of streets and see from one end to the other. Then this boy called Sammy, gets a job there because the father knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody in the store. Being the only store there, it wasn't easy to get a job there, but because of relationships, Sammy gets the job. He is a sales clerk, and his boss is Engl, who teaches Sunday school. I said religious or church environment because of the teaching of Sunday school and the concept of morality. And on this particular girl, the three girls walk in, almost half dressed. They are not by the seashore, but not too far away anyway. But technically and morally, people are supposed to dress decently when they come to the store. The girls come in, not decently dressed, but Sammy immediately is attracted to these girls. Let's remember he's just 17. He's emotional. He's infatuated with one of the girls whom he calls Queenie. But one thing we notice about Sammy is that he's very perceptive of those differences. He's very intelligent. He can describe each of them, describe their movement. He can paint an accurate picture of them, making the distinctions between height and weight and what they have on. Then he becomes consumed by these three girls, who fortunately end up coming to his house for checkout, excuse me. And as they're about to check out, Engl comes to the girls and says, "Hey girls, next time when you come to a store, could you be decently dressed?" Queenie says, "Well, decently dressed." He said, "No, I'm not asking you. It's not quarreling with you, but I'm just asking you to be decently dressed. Put something decent on you, because every store, everybody in the store now starts watching at them. They are also shocked to see the girls dressed that way. Sammy rings those things, even makes errors ringing them, and he is much more concerned about a relationship with Queenie. He goes into a trance, imagining himself in Queenie's house with the parents having a cocktail there. Then before he wakes back up, and he's not pleased with the way Engl handles the situation, because Engl sort of embarrassed the girls. Then after Sammy finishes, almost finishes ringing the store, the produce that they've bought, he tells Lengel, I quit. You didn't have to talk to them that way. Lengel said, Sammy, do you know what they're talking about? So yeah, I know you didn't have to be so rude to the girls. He wants to behave like the macho man, the girls' guiding angel, the girls' protector. And he's also guided by his grandmother's principle that it is fertile not to complete any action that you start. When you start doing something, it's fertile not to complete it. He wants to complete the action, so he works hard. And as he works hard, thinking that probably he's going to see these girls waiting for him. Unfortunately, the girls have disappeared. So he stands out there and looks back. And everything is so alien to him. And he describes the customers as sheep. And Lengel standing there like somebody who has injected him with iron injection. He's insulting of everybody who comes in there. But at the same time, as he looks ahead, he sees a very difficult future. The truth now dawns on him that he's just lost the only job he had. That it wasn't easy getting that job. And that's why Lengel asked him, Sammy, do you know, your parents will not be happy with you for losing this job. But he says, he doesn't care because it is fertile not to finish an act that you take or an action that you begin. So the story is about growth, experience, growing up and being a responsible person. When Sammy actually quits his job, he's trying to protect his girls. He's trying to be the man. And this short story very much reflects and reminds me of Richard Wright's short story, A Man Who Was Almost a Man. This boy was also 17 too. And he thought that by getting a gun, all the other African-American guys who were laughing at him would respect him. But he didn't know how to fire the gun. And unfortunately, he killed a mule and pretended that the mule fell on a plow and died. Then the owner of the farm tells him he has to work to pay for the mule. And the father asks him for the gun, but the next day at night, he runs away with the gun. He runs away and disappears. And he says he's almost a man. But how can you be a man when you cannot even aim the gun well? Because he tries to aim the gun, he tries to fire the gun, but the gun misfires and he kills the mule unintentionally. It is not the gun that will make him a man. It is not quitting that will make Sammy a man. It has something to do with what we call responsibility. Responsibility. It's extremely important. In this work we're doing, the whole concept of responsibility comes up to be very, very important. Which throws us again, and now I may be talking fast because I need to catch up all this. Throws us again forward to Fences by August Wilson. And the most important scene in the play called Fences to me is the scene where Troy meets with his son. He fights with the son about responsibilities. He doesn't want his son to go into sports because in his early days he was a member of the Black League. And he was benched most of the time, although he was very good. He was benched most of the time because he wasn't white. The blacks had no opportunity or very limited opportunities to play in the major leagues. And he sees his son almost doing the same thing, but he forgets that time has changed. He doesn't want his son to go into athletics. He tells his son, why don't you become a mechanic, a farmer, employ your own self, be your own person. Because when somebody employs you, the person dictates what you do, what you get, what you gain. But when you employ yourself as a mechanic, you determine the time, you decide what exactly to do. But he forgets that the times have changed and that boys and girls were making money through sports. However, the options were still very few because you either went into the military or you went into music or into sports. Lion, his very first son, which he had just before he went to jail in Mobile, Alabama, is a musician but doesn't make it because it's not everybody who goes into music that will make it. You got to be like a Michael Jackson or some very important personality and to work hard to cut the music. He doesn't make it. And we see him coming back to the father on every Friday, payday Friday, to borrow money from the father. And the father initially insults him and there's almost a fight, but eventually he gives the money, which shows again the kind of love-hate relationship. I wouldn't call it love-hate relationship. It's a kind of relationship that exists between parents and children, where sometimes they quarrel over things, not because the father hates him, but the father wants him to be responsible. Then, the most important scene which I was coming to is that scene where the father fights with Travis, when he with Corey. Troy fights with Corey, who was the son that was ready to be employed by colleges to play ball. Then they had called setting up an appointment, and when the father realized that this boy, Corey, had quit his job in order to practice his games, to play, to be recruited, he called the college and prevented them from coming. And the boy got so angry and had a real fight with the father. And the father told him exactly what his philosophy in life was. He says, the boy asked the father, "Why don't you love me, Dad? You've never liked me. You've never loved me." There's Washington plays a crucial role here, especially when he plays the part of Troy. He said, "Boy, who told you I have to love you? What makes you think I really, really have to love you? Don't you eat? Don't you have a house to sleep in? Don't I feed you? Don't I give you everything you need?" And he says, "Why do I do these things? Why do you think I feed you? I give you your food and everything else and your mother." The boy looks around and says, "It's because you love me." Yeah, and Troy laughs and says, No, it's not because I love you. It's because of what? I am your father. Because it is my responsibility to provide those things for you. And sometimes we read that play and we gloss over that and we or either ignore it and we don't consider its centrality here. It determines and decides and defines the African American male's role in his family, that of responsibility. Responsibility. Because so many times we profess love which is not actually there. And if we were to put the two together, love and responsibility, if we could separate them, we would take more of responsibility. Responsibility comes from love. Responsibility goes beyond that. It keeps you awake every night, thinking of what to do next. What are you going to do next? What are you supposed to do for your family, to help your family, in spite of everything? Troy says that. And that comes out very, very clearly. He says, it's my responsibility. And that is your responsibility in life. As you grow up, as a man grows up, his responsibility is to take care of his family. And that's why sometimes in those African American novels, you find against situations of single parents when the fathers simply just walked away because they couldn't stand it anymore. It's not because they didn't love their families, but because they couldn't play the role of the father. They couldn't play that part. The father just walked away. The father couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't stand the suffering of his family. He couldn't provide for his family. is the concept of what? Responsibility. So that play, Francis, deals a lot with responsibility. Then, when we come to the relationship between Troy and Rose, it's one that has many people questioning the whole concept of fidelity and infidelity. They've been married for over 18 years. Troy tells us how they got married. Troy grew up in a small countryside town with his father. It was a little hard on him somehow. The father was a farmer, then sent him to go farm, to use the plow to go work. One day, he calls his girlfriend, and instead of working, they were somewhere at the edge of the farm making love, and the horse strolled back to the father's house without them noticing it. The father discovered the horse and followed the trace to go back all the way to where he was supposed to be working. The father met him with this girl, and they started whooping him. He sprang off the girl and decided to run away. He thought the father was trying to discipline him because of his waywardness. When he turned around, he realized that the father wanted the girl for himself, forcing the girl to make love to him. Then he came back and attacked the father and gave the father a big blow. The father, being stronger, he turned around and beat him off. And he passed out. His eyes were swollen when he woke up the next day and couldn't see. The dog was licking his eyes. He couldn't see anything. He thought he was dead. Then he decided from that day, went home, packed his things, and left. At a very early age, I think about 14, and left. Trekked all the way 200 miles to Mobile, Alabama. When he arrived there, it wasn't easy to find a job. Then he started stealing for himself, until he went to a bar and met Lyons' mother. Then had to be stealing twice now, fell in love with her, and had to steal twice for the woman and for himself, and 3 times when Lyons came, until one day he attacked a gentleman to get money. This guy pulled out a gun and shot at him, and before he could fall, he sprang on this man with a knife and killed him. The shot didn't kill him, it wounded him badly, but the gentleman died. So he ended up in prison, and that's where he met Bono. And Bono always looked up to him with a lot of respect. They started playing baseball there, and they were there together until they were released. Then when he came out and went to the bar, he saw Rose there. And Rose said when she saw him, she knew that he could have children with him. He was tired of running around with men, and finally she wanted to get settled. So they finally got married, and they were there for 18 years. And they always joke about it, how they met each other. Rose said, he couldn't get his eyes off her, while he says, no, she wanted him so badly. But they got married anyway after 18 years. They got married and had Corey, their only son. And after 18 years, Troy cheated on her. And when Rose asked, I've been here with you, why? Why did you do it? Then he brought up an excuse. Said, Rose, I've been here for 18 years, standing in one spot. Nothing moving. I just wanted to see what the outside world was, what it was like out there. To go out without talking about responsibilities, money this, money that. Because when you go to a lover, I mean, more often than not, you just enjoy yourself. You don't start talking about responsibility, this and that and that and that. Rose said, but hey, but you've been here with me. I've invested 18 years of my life in our marriage. I was here with you. Why did you do this? I gave you everything in the bedroom and food and everything else. Again, which raises up the issues of infidelity. Is it a dissatisfaction with our partners? Is it some kind of boredom? Is it an experimentation? You just want to see how the other world is like? This is a $1 million question to be answered by such people. However, Rose drives him out of the house. Then incidentally, Alberta, who is the girl from Florida with whom he has this kid, delivers a baby and passes out in the process of delivery. Troy goes and brings the baby back. Rose now and brings the baby back home. Rose pities the baby and accepts the baby and says, look, I've gained a baby, but I've lost a wife. And again, Rose becomes increasingly churchy. She goes to church, and we see her and the other girls comforting each other by baking and selling church cakes. Then eventually, Troy dies, swinging the bat out there after he has completed building the fence. Remember, the title of the play is Fences. And Bono bought a refrigerator for his wife, a cooker for his wife. Then Troy eventually goes into the armed forces. He's back again. We see it was either athletics or the army. He comes back for the burial, but denies to go to the funeral itself. And the mother's very angry. So you cannot love me and not love your father. Which reminds us also of Death of a Salesman, where the mother says, look, a man is not like a bird that goes and flies. You either come here for both of us or you don't come here at all. So back to Francis. It says you can't do that. You know, you're very much like your father, proud like your father. I try to do everything to prevent you from being like your father. But the more I try to do this, the more you became like your father. Stubborn, hardworking, committed to course of action and everything else. So again, we see part of continuity here when he looks very much like the father. And there's the song which the father had taught them when he was young. And he comes back, Corey comes back and sings that song with Renee, who is the daughter, who's Troy's daughter by Alberta. The play ends with the burial of Troy. And then there's a character there called Gabriel, who was Troy's brother. He had gone into the army, but as a result of an explosion, he received some shrapnels in his brains and came back disabled. He's handicapped, and the government pays money for his handicap. And Troy tells us very clearly, Troy tells us very clearly that it's money from that accident, from that incident, that enabled him to buy a house. Well, which again, we see Corey telling the father, said, no, you can't send me away from this house because your house is not your own, it's Uncle Gabriel's. Gabriel, therefore, moves around with a trombone or with a trumpet, and he believes that he's the angel Gabriel. Again, we see August Wilson's subtle way of introducing religion, angel Gabriel. And each time Gabriel comes, he talks of angels, he talks of demons, he talks of heaven, the book in heaven where all names are written, and that he has seen Troy's name in that book. And towards the end, you see, he tries to blow that trumpet. Although it's a broken down trumpet, he cannot get the air through. He's so emotional. He says he's blowing the trumpet to welcome Troy into heaven. Again, there's still that biblical hope from most African Americans of going home. Going home. You see the women again turning to church. Ruth turns to church. They do Bexel in order to help or other facilities. And Gabriel is always talking about heaven, about God opening that book in which all names are written, and the names he has already seen. And that becomes pathetic, it becomes emotional, and again, reflects what many of us see in real life in terms of the challenges of living a life, or growing up as a black. One of the challenges was in terms of the profession, as I had earlier said, but we see in terms of garbage workers, that was the only other job that those who were not educated could get at that time, even the few educated blacks. But they couldn't drive the garbage truck. They were the haulers of the garbage. And Troy was being so futuristic, being so idealistic, asked his boss, how come that black people don't drive? And the boss realizes that that's the truth. Mr. Rand calls him to the office. Everybody is frightened that Troy has asked an abominable question, that he will be fired from job. Everybody is shaking, even Troy himself. Eventually, when the day arrives and he goes there, he's promoted to be a driver. Unfortunately for Troy, he doesn't know how to drive. He doesn't have a license. He doesn't even have a car. How is he going to drive? And he says, well, he would just sit up front. But again, August Wilson doesn't pursue that much because he doesn't tell us how he gets around being a driver or what he does to become a driver. He doesn't pursue that. But he introduces that again as a kind of variety in terms of what was available for black folks at that time, driving. Again, driving, which we find where in A Raisin in the Sun, which is the next play. I'm just connecting this so that you can see the connections, because ultimately this class ends with a research paper. If you can look at these connections and find a way to write a paper, to develop one of these themes, that would be a fantastic paper. In A Raisin in the Sun, what do we find? Walter Younger, who's a chauffeur, who's a driver. He's not educated, like Troy. He's not educated. But unlike Troy, he's waiting for money from his father's insurance. And unlike Troy, he works for this white man. He drives his car to work every day, opens the door for the white man to go in, closes the door, takes the white man's bag with him to the office, and comes back and sermonizes the car. He just cleans it over and over and over because there's nothing to do. He waits until the gentleman calls him, either to take him to some other place or at the end of the day to drive him home. And he tells his mother, "Mother, is that a job, driving every day? I go in, open the door, get him out, close the door. That's not a job. I need to do something better than this. That's part of the American dream." And when I drive around, I see these white boys sitting down and talking business. I want to be like one of them. But the only way you can be like one of them if you have the power, the economic power, the means, the financial power to do that, which he eventually gets when the insurance money comes. But the problem is everybody in the house has a plan for the insurance money. Walter wants to go into business with. Benita, the sister, wants to go to medical school. She's already in medical school, needs that for payment of medical school. Big Mama, Mama Lena, wants it for a house because they're living in a cramped house. Travis, Mama, Ruth, Walter, and Benita, 5 of them, in a 1.5 bedroom house because the other half is a kind of partition where they've used cloth, a piece of cloth to shelter it. It acts like a room, and Travis sleeps on the couch in the sleeping room. and they have just one bathroom, and every morning people line up to bathe. But you have to wake up early and to reserve a position there for your own brother or sister to come in immediately. They're struggling for entrance into the bathroom. They want to get out of there. Big Mama has a flower that's dying for light. It's in need of light. But anyway, that is what they can call a house, a home. So every day, Walter comes back and asks a question. Is it there? Is it there? Everybody knows what the it is. The it is referring to the check. And Ruth falls out with him saying, look, it's not your money. What is wrong with you? What are you talking about it every time? Is it there? Is it there? But finally the money comes, and Big Mama gets the check. It reminds her of the husband who worked so hard and died. That's the insurance money, $10,000. The question is, what is she going to do with it? She has a plan to buy a house. Walter says he needs that money to open a store, to go into business. Again, with the limitations given to allowed most of the blacks at that time, the only readily available business that could go into is liquor stores. That allowed them to open a lot of liquor bars and that get drunk and all that kind of stuff. It was much more easier to get it than anything else. And he contracts, he meets with Willis, Mr. Harris, Willis and Bobo to make arrangements for it. They meet in the bar and they talk about it. And when the money comes, Mama refuses to give him the money. And let's remember, Mama is very highly religious. He fights with Benita over religion when Benita says that every time anything happens in the house, they say, God, God, God. God doesn't pay rent. God is not responsible. God is just an ideology. The mother calls him and slaps her and says, repeat after me, in my mother's house, God still exists. And she does. She establishes that relationship, that connection, that though they may not be praying, though they may not be talking about God, God still exists. God is in control. Then when Walter starts drinking, Mama goes to the bar and gives Walter that money, says, hey, this is the money. If this is what is about to kill you, this is the money. Open an account, put some of the money there for Benita's and Travis' school fees. Do what you want to do with the rest. He takes the money and invests in the liquor store. Incidentally, he doesn't know Harris very well. Harris and Bobo, they were supposed to meet to go to Springfield early in the morning at 8 o'clock. Bobo was there at 7 o'clock, very excited, waiting for Mr. Harris. Unfortunately, Harris never came. He waited all day long. Then he comes home to, Walter's so excited about the investment. Harris comes home to tell Walter about it. Walter's excited. Then Bobo comes home to tell Walter about what happened. And Walter says, did he go? He says, no. I say, what happened? I don't know. He says, well, you were late, or you didn't go there, or he's thinking of tomorrow or something, because he's looking for alternatives, because he doesn't want to believe that the money is lost. And the guy starts crying and says, he waited there all day long, and the guy never showed up. And that it is also his money, all his savings, his insurance, everything, retirement money, everything he had, he also invested in it. But Harris has gone away. And that's just the time that the family almost explodes. Big Mama raises his hands. If you've seen the movie, Big Mama raises his hands to smash Walter, but holds them, says, oh God, death has invaded my house. And he's lost everything. He's down. And Benita, everybody reacts to it. Mama is disappointed. Benita insults him, says there's nothing left in him to be loved. Then Mama raises a very important point. She says, Benita, you never say there's nothing left in anybody to love. Do you know what he has gone through? And before you start judging him, think of the valleys he's climbed out of. The mountains he climbed down, climbed up, the valleys, the hills, the ups and downs. Think about all these things before you judge him. Have you sympathized with him? Have you cried with him? Do you know what he's going through? This again reminds us of with Linda in Death of a Salesman, when the son Beef says what? He doesn't know himself. The two kids say, oh, he's not like Mr. Charlie, our neighbor. Linda says, go and make Charlie your father. Can you make Charlie your father? What goes through the mind of a man when he drives 100 miles and comes back? No friend recognizes him. Nobody buys anything from him. He has to talk to himself. And attention must be paid. Attention must be paid to people like that. He must not be allowed to die like a dog. This is exactly the same cry that Mama is saying here. So before we judge Walter, let's see what he has gone through. He was still simply struggling also to make life meaningful. Let's remember that before he invested that money, this is what he said to his mother. I want to put pearls on my wife's fingers. I want to buy a Cadillac for her too. I want to buy a convertible car for myself, a beautiful car for myself, open businesses for myself, and to allow my child go to the best schools. That's the dream of every American. That's the dream of everybody, every African or African American. He has just a good dream. Probably but just a wrong method. And that comes back again to Death of a Salesman when Biff said what? Biff said he had just a wrong dream. He didn't know himself. And Happy says, no, he had the right dream, and I'm going to fight for him in the city. He had the right dream. He might have had the right dream, but the wrong method of going about it. And Charlie, their neighbor, says, nobody blames this man. This is a salesman who depends on the smile of customers, and when nobody smiles back, there's an earthquake. Nobody blames him. But in Walter's case, we tend to blame him in a way because he did not quite understand Harris. Especially when he tells us that Harris was the only man who knew what was important in life. And he tells Mama, Mama, you told me to take care of what is important, to note only what is important. Harris knew it. He knew what was important. And today, I've noticed there are only two people in the world, the takers and the token. And we blacks, we instead of taking, we keep on moralizing what is right, what is wrong, what is right, while the takers are what? Taking and taking and taking. Then again, let's flash back to Fences. In Fences, Troy says, sometimes life is about taking too, but you have to take the crooked with the straight. Because if you are looking for the straight, you'll be selecting. While the rest just pile them up, why don't you take the crooked with the straight when you go home? You have enough time to sort them out. When you start sorting them out, you can throw away the crooked, but you have enough of the straight. No, the black man, because of his moral conception, moral upbringing, he is looking for what? The straight, the straight, the straight. He's moralizing, as Walter says, what is right and what is wrong, what is right and what is wrong. I said, that is what is wrong with us black folks. We moralize a lot. While the other people are doing what? Taking and taking and taking. Mama, this is it. So, this is exactly what Willie Roman ends doing when he commits suicide for his family to have the $10,000 insurance money. But in erasing the sound, it's like now we take off from there. But now there's a black family waiting for this money to come. The money comes and literally breaks the family apart. But when the money is lost, everything is gone. Mama had revealed that he used part of that money in buying a house in Claiborne, an area reserved for white folks. And the guys from Claiborne come to buy the house, even at double the price, in order to keep the blacks from there. Walter pretends to want to accept the money and calls the white guy to come. And when he comes, he tells them, look, my father worked for every brick of that house, and me and my family, we are going in there. We are going in there. Everybody becomes so proud of him. And the mother said, he came into his manhood today. And then manhood again is what? Responsibility. It's not about love here, it's about responsibility, being a man. And that's what Troy says in Fences. He came to his manhood. And everybody unites behind Walter, and they all go in there. There's a redemption here. Redemption that comes from love. Redemption that comes from understanding each other. And redemption that comes from responsibilities. In Death of a Salesman, there's literally no redemption, because all the four characters that gather, because Willie Loman went into salesmanship because he believed that the death of a salesman was the kind of death he wanted to die, because Dave Singleman, when he died, the only salesman he knew, there was sadness all over him. Business stopped. Vehicles came. Visitors came to pay respect to him. And that's the death he wanted to die. Remember the title, Death of a Salesman. But when he dies, nobody comes. Linda says, where are his friends? Nobody. There are only four of them there. Linda, the wife, who questions, why, Willie? Why did you do it? We just finished paying for the house. Why did you do it? I feel so empty. I feel like if you went out on some business and you're going to come back. Beef says he didn't know himself. He was better at his hands, carpentry work, than the salesmanship. I'm going away. And Happy says, don't say that. He had the right dream, and I'm going to sit here and fight for him. Yet, he is about the third in line to become the city manager. The business manager. Then Charlie, that friend, says, you don't have to blame him. He was a salesman, and something happened. He cracked because he couldn't sell anything anymore. And prior to this, Charlie had told him, Willie Loman, you keep on saying people don't love you. You named somebody. You are in sales business, but yet you don't know what is important in sales business. What is important in salesmanship is what you can sell. You don't sell love. You don't sell naming somebody Howard. Although Willie Loman has said when he started business, there was love and comradeship. But today it's all cut and dry business, which is what is going on in our life today. It's all about business. So this place I've talked about, that link, that connected salesmanship, responsibility, love, the business, the family unity, growing up as a family, and the profundity of responsibility. So this is what I want you to think about as you concentrate about your research paper, concentrate on reading these short stories. Look at them from this point of view. What I will be doing through the streaming now is spotlighting those areas that we should have covered in class, or that I'm covering in class with the others, so that I can give you a comprehensive view of what this class looks like, or what is going on in this class. Thank you very much, and I'll be talking to you very soon. All right, bye. I don't know. I clicked add. I don't know what
Okay, let's see. All right.
I just clicked add, but just can we?
Okay, and then we go to live streaming.
Is it shouldn't be online or not offline?
Live stream offline. Let me go back to this one for a second. So it's still streaming.
It's still streaming?
Yeah.
Okay.
See,
yeah, after streaming, where do we stop?
Okay, let me see. Let me go to stream offline. Go to events. Okay, live now.
Okay.
Control room. Okay, so
yeah, but I've been on for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah.
Events.
But he had to mute the microphone.
Okay, live now. Okay, yeah, you're live now.
Yeah, but did you?
Oh, let me see at the moment. Okay, stay here.
Hello? Yeah. But he had to mute the microphone.
Okay, yeah, you're live now.
Yeah, but did you?
Oh, let me see at the moment. Okay, stay here.
Hello? But he had to mute the microphone. Yeah, but did you?
Oh, let me see at the moment. Stay here.
Are you hearing me? Huh?
I can hear you this morning.
Okay.
You might want to do this. You might want to do this.
Because the other time he muted the phone. I don't know how he did it.
Okay. Do you have a lecture or something to?
Are you hearing me? Huh?
Is
Okay.
you might want to keep talking to do this. You might want to do this.
Because the other time he muted the phone. I don't know how he did it.
Do you have a lecture or something to?
Are you hearing me? Huh? Hello? Okay, but as soon as I talk, I'm hearing myself here. But remember, he has to mute the microphone.
I think you talk and it comes after. That's how it does.
I mean, can they mute this microphone because he did that?
You muted it?
Okay, but as soon as I talk, I'm hearing myself here. But remember, he has to mute the microphone.
Yeah, it's recording, but the recording it comes after.
Yeah, but the point is, how do we mute? How can they mute this microphone because he did that? How do we mute this?
You muted it?
Okay, but as soon as I talk, I'm hearing myself here. But remember, he has to mute the microphone. Then the first one I did, it worked.
But the recording it comes after.
Yeah, but the point is, how do we mute? How can they mute this microphone? How do we mute this? Okay, but as soon as I talk, first one I did, it worked.
It comes after.
Yeah, but the point is, how do we mute? How can they mute this microphone? How do we mute? Okay, well, as soon as I talk, I'm hearing myself. Yeah, but yes, you mute the microphone. Then the first one I did, it worked.
It comes after.
Yeah, but the point is, how do we mute? How can they mute this microphone? How do we mute?
It says this video is restricted. By signing with the Google apps. But it's working, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go and give the lecture. It's working.
Okay. Again, I'm back to talk about the ultimate.
You're hearing yourself. That's the issue. Yes.
Ultimate objective for this class, which is the research paper.
Signing with the Google.
We should be able to talk about what a research paper is.
Lecture is working.
Okay. Again, I'm back to talk about the ultimate. Yeah, from the word research, we realize that we are dealing with searching for something again, even by read and search. The research paper we should be able to talk about would definitely not be on something absolutely new. Okay. Although we insist on originality. It could be something you've heard about, something you've read about, because in my first lecture, I tried to create a kind of link between the short stories and some of the poems, and then definitely not be on the plays. Absolutely new. So with this research paper, the idea is to pick up something, especially let's look at the American dream. What is the American dream? What is the concept of the American dream? How do this works reflect the American dream? Something they wish for. Now, if we go back to the short story Everyday Use, so with this research paper, we see precisely that the family tends to be a representation of the concept of the American dream. The American dream was it's an idea, a concept, a philosophy, an economic something that was political point that stated very clearly that the American society gives us the opportunity to rise up from ashes to wealth. That the family, that everything being equal, you can, or anybody has the opportunity here to make something meaningful for himself, to improve his life, that stated very clearly, to become rich. The American society gives, and that is why to rise up from ashes to wealth. The whole concept of the American dream subsumed financial. You can, or anybody has the opportunity, ability. For instance, to make something meaningful for himself. The concept upheld the idea of having a limited family. Initially, it was a family with 2 kids, or 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. It moved down to 2 kids, a boy, a girl, now to 1, and even today nothing. But it was the idea of marriage. Marriage was part of the American dream at that particular time. And then business success, for somebody working out there, making money, and at least getting a couple of cars, a good car for everyday work, and one for the family on Sundays, and one for the wife, or something, and probably having some house boys or house girls, or people to work for you, or for that particular individual, and then having a healthy bank account, not getting necessarily superfluous money, but just being comfortable enough with the money you earn or you make to live a satisfactory life. That was the American dream. A dream that you can rise up, like some of the students did, like Abraham Lincoln, rise up from the railroad to a president, Obama. Everybody has that opportunity to do it, but it entails a lot of work, and it also entails having the correct dream. And by the dream here, we're talking about the plan, we're talking about the the push, the desire to achieve something. You must have a target in mind. You must qualify yourself for that target. You must be prepared for it. But it entails you must have the drive to get it.
It also entails having the correct dream. And by the dream,
And let's remember what John Donne said: "No man is an island in himself."
The push, the desire to achieve something. You must have a target in mind.
You must qualify yourself for that target. You must be prepared for it.
But it entails
You must have the drive to get it.
It also entails having the correct dream. And by the
And
dream,
let's remember what John Donne said: "No man is an island."
John Donne said, "A man is not an island by himself, so you need other people. You live with people. You need them as you move forward."
You must qualify yourself for that target.
So we have that becomes being very prevalent in most of the works we read. Dee has to go to school in order to improve her life.
John Donne said, "A man
To
is not an
achieve
island by
her own
himself,
dream
so
of
you need
success,
other people. You
of being
live with
important
people.
in
You
society.
need them as you move forward."
In A Raisin in the Sun,
So
Willie,
we have
not Willie,
becomes being very prevalent in
Walter has his own dream,
we read.
to be rich.
Dee
I mean,
has to
he
go to
is
school in order to
the
improve
best
his
exemplification
life.
of the concept of that
Achieve
American dream.
her own
When he
dream
says, look,
success,
I need to get the money, I need to get the houses, I need to get the business, I need my son to go to the best school, I need my wife to put on the best earrings, the best pearls, and what it takes to show that I have made it. I mean, he is the best. To work in an office, come back tired,
that American dream.
when he says, get a glass of wine or to drink and to feel at home, to feel comfortable that I've arrived.
I need my son to go to the best
school.
school. I need
Then
my
in
wife
Death
to
of a Salesman, it's the same thing. Willie Loman has the same dream.
earrings,
Dream of coming as number one. That his children should become what? Number one.
married.
And that's why in his language, he keeps on talking about number one, being the first, being number one.
Get a glass of wine.
But it takes more than talking to be that number one.
That I've arrived.
It takes more than just the idea to be that number one.
Then in Death of a Salesman, it's the same thing.
And you find that in
Dream of coming
A Raisin in
number
the
one.
Sun.
That his children should become what?
In A Raisin in the Sun, Walter wants to be that number one. He wants to make it too.
Talking about number one.
But his dream is frustrated because he goes about it just the wrong way. He has just the wrong partner. He hardly knows Harris, he hardly knows Bobby, but he entrusts them with that money.
You find that in
And we don't see any way in the play where the three of them sit together to come up with a blueprint plan for the business.
But his dream is
Apart from the occasional meeting they had in the bar, and they talked briefly about it, and Harry said, okay, Willie,
but he entrusts them with that
Walter, when are you going to get me the money? Walter said, okay, it's just a matter of a few days. Just a matter of a few days, the money will be there. Apart from that occasion in the movie or in the play, we don't see them sitting down and putting their heads together for any business transaction. No, we don't see them doing that.
and they talk briefly about it.
And just like in Death of a Salesman,
But he entrusts
we don't see them
when are you going to get
actually succeeding.
Okay, it's just a matter
Because in fact, Willie Loman had calmed the children so full of hot air
movie or in the
that they
play,
couldn't stand
see
the
them
receiving
sitting
orders
down
from any other person.
together.
He invested all his hopes in Beef, and Beef failed him. Because again, part of the infidelity,
like in Death of
Beef
a
had
Salesman.
apprehended him in a restaurant
We don't see them.
with a woman
When are you going to get
actually
me the money?
succeeding. And as a result of
Because
that,
in fact, Willie Loman
Beef
had
lost
calmed the children so
all the
full
faith
of
he
hot
had in
air,
him.
movie or in the
that
play,
they couldn't stand
because
like in another
he
of
invested all his hopes in Beef.
Arthur Miller's plays, All My Sons, Beef looked at him not like a man, he looked at him like a father. A father, an example of morality, uprightness, good behavior. And that's why when Beef failed his math exams, instead of staying back to study, he followed his father because he knew the father could make the math teacher give him grades to graduate. That is the faith children have in their parents. morality, upright. Unfortunately, when he caught him with the woman,
Beef failed,
everything,
his math exams
disappeared.
instead of staying back to study,
He came back, went to his locker room.
He knew the father
with Bernard, took all his sneakers
graduate.
with universities written on them, University of Virginia written on them, and burned them and destroyed. And from that very moment, the father keeps on saying, you destroy yourself, you burned yourself to death. Everything. And then Beef keeps on telling the father, you are fake. The fortunate thing, or unfortunate thing, is that Beef Bernard is so passionate about his father that he will never dare to release why he calls his father fake. Burned them and destroyed. Only Beef and the father, and probably the girl in the hotel know what happened in that hotel. And then Beef keeps on telling. And Bernard, Charlie's son, also knows it. But that something happened, but they didn't know exactly what happened, because he tells Willie Loman, he asks Willie Loman, Willie, what happened? When Beef failed his exam, he said he was going to see you in Boston. Remember, they live in New York. What happened? And Willie Loman is about to slap him on his face. And Bernard said, no, I was just trying to, I was just trying to get some answers, because something happened. Exactly what happened. Because he tells, and you see, Willie Loman would think that if he revealed the truth, that would undercut his own picture as a father, as a responsible father. You see, again, a moral current running through the plane, that failure. Then you find Linda again, who knows that Willie Loman has been lying about commission, because Willie Loman is old, nobody buys from him anymore. He's a salesman. He ads and nobody buys anything from him. He has to come borrow money from Charlie and to pretend that that money is part of his commission. Then that's unfortunate, but that's the way life has become. That's what has been thrown to him. But Linda knows the truth and wouldn't reveal it to Willie, not because he wants to keep Willie there dreaming and lying, but simply because that's the only thing Willie has to go on, to continue going on. And he tells the children, what do you want me to do? You see what I'm sitting here waiting. That's what has been thrown to him. If I tell him the truth, he's going to kill himself. Linda knows the truth. So I'd rather stay with this lie. Knowing what he's planning to do, stay with this lie and give him at least some life. Because that's tell him the truth. Thing really has to go on. Many feminists blame Linda. Let's say she's weak. She was supposed to stand up, especially the way Willie treats her. Willie wouldn't allow her talk even to the children. Willie is domineering and all that kind of stuff. But Linda knows for sure that something is happening to William. Linda tells us Willie's name was never in the newspapers. He never made it big. But he's a man and something is happening to him, and we must not allow him die like a dog. It's not about arguing that, okay, I have a life to live. No, it's about being by your side, standing by your side, standing by your man, standing by your woman. Linda takes that position, stand by her man. He never made it big, but he's a man. The American dream again becomes just another big thing. It's not about arguing that, okay, I have a life to live. Walter, no, it's about being. We find a little bit of it in Benita, who thinks about going to college. Linda takes that position. But that college again is an indirect way of achieving that American dream. Education as the way through, the way out. Another big thing. Not longer, not just athletics or the army or truck driving, but now what? Education. This is 21st century. 20th century, 21st century. We're upbeat. We're moving forward. We're following what Du Bois said. We can't continue to imprison ourselves to slave mentality. We've got to extricate ourselves from the cocoon of this enslavement, where we believe that we have to go only to the farm. 20th century, 21st Benita is there, hardworking, wants to go out. We're moving forward. Even if she becomes a medical doctor and goes to Africa, again, the idea of Africa comes out.
To slave mentality.
And Big Mama said, oh, Africa.
Extricate ourselves from the cocoon.
That little country out there.
This enslavement.
We give donations in church to help the poor. Again, a revelation of how little the African American knows about Africa, because Africa is
even if she becomes a medical doctor and goes to Africa.
And when Benita talks of the Ebola Asaga's place of origin, Mama again wants to ask questions about Africa. It says Ebola is a tribe, or a tribe, or the Igbo language is a language of a tribe in Nigeria. But again, there's always that attempt to connect with Africa, with our roots, with everything else. But that connection, Mama again wants to ask questions about Africa. It says Ebola is a tribe, or a tribe, or the Igbo language is a language of a tribe in Nigeria. But again, there's always that attempt. That connection is always superficial, especially as in the 400 years. But that connection. So remember, County Collins said in Heritage, I sit here every time dreaming of Africa, low, high grass, where lovers luxuriate, dance, sing, and play. And that connection is always superficial. Rain bubbles, especially as my blood bubbles. But again, it's an Africa that County Collins has been separated from us by over 300 years, 400 years. Low, high, and that's true. Because as an African, we don't actually know. Dance, sing, and play. And we smile and grin. Because we wear the mask. My blood bubbles. Because the ground on which we walk is foul. Has been separated from us by over 300 years, 400 years. So it's part of that African mentality. That's true. About going back to the roots. What are the roots? Even when Garvey asked for the return of African Americans to Africa, they were going to a very strange land, a land from which they had been torn for so many different years, many years. And the connection is only in color rather than language or culture. And we find that clearly delineated in a play called A Dilemma of a Ghost, where this young character, Claire, goes back to Ghana, and then she realizes that a land from which they have been so many different years, many years. She's so much and the connection is only at odds with the culture, because the boyfriend had told her that she represents the best of two cultures, the African culture and the American culture put together. But she realizes again when she goes over there that she is all American. The color is not an identification of perimeter here, but his ethnicity, his attitude is what is inside her. Then she regresses to drinking and smoking heavily, and breaks down because she's found herself in a continent that she doesn't recognize. There's so more of America in the African American than Africa in the African American. And that place says it very, very clearly, making us that distinction. So it's not in the changing of the name like we have in everyday use that we assume a nationality. It has something deeper to do with the way we perceive it, the way we behave, and the way we are perceived, and the way we do things. So it's not really changing. So the American dream could be a very good theme or topic to deal with. Just like cultural heritage, the concept of culture could be one, because we've talked about everyday use. We've talked about erasing the sun, especially when we find this woman, Benita, being given an African attire, loincloth or dress by a saga. And she waves it and dances on the stage and says, I'm going to be the African queen. And when Ruth asks her, what is the dance? He said, I don't know the name of the dance, but it is the dance dance by women singing and welcoming their husbands from war. And she hardly knows what it is, and whether the dance moves she's making are correct. But all she knows is that these are African dances. All the loincloth she has connects her to her African roots. And then she and Saga begin to talk about assimilationist theories or assimilation, which she says she is not one, but she isn't truly and completely assimilated into the American culture because that's the way she's grown up. Even in that conversation, they always disagree in terms of what really matters. What really matters. They come from two different cultural backgrounds, and they will always tend to disagree in terms of how to do things, how to create a relationship, and what the basis of that relationship should be. Again, Big Mama keeps on saying, all right, come home and let me give you some home-cooked meal, because to them, Saga has been deprived of his homeland for so long that he may eventually forget what it is like to eat African food. You may want to talk about that. You may want to talk about the African American family, or you may want to compare the African American family in A Raisin in the Sun and Death of a Salesman, or in any of the works we have read. Then, in order to find out what they have in common. Okay. All right. I'd like to stop here and then continue next time. When we do a little bit of poetry. Okay, by now I had expected all of you to have done the narrative essay, the pretext which I posted online, what they have in common, then the everyday use essay. All right, I'd like to stop here. That's dealing with Mama's relationship or attitude towards the two girls, Maggie and Dee. When we do a little bit of poetry and the poetry, selecting two of the poems and comparing them, what the poets are talking about. And I wish you could do a little bit of Lansing Hughes there to the whole concept of cultural identity, then the everyday use, how he feels himself more at ease. That's dealing with Mama's relationship or attitude towards the two girls, Maggie and Dee. And the poetry, selecting two of the poems and comparing them, what the poets are talking about.